Mark the Handler O'Connor and Sofia Ramirez never met face to face, but together they built one of the deadliest cocaine empires the world has ever seen. From Liverpool's weathered docks to the jungles of South America, their shadowy partnership turned a historic port city into a global trafficking powerhouse. Liverpool's docks have always been the beating heart of the city. For centuries, ships from all over the world docked here, bringing in goods, ideas, and people. The port was more than just a place to unload cargo. It was a symbol of Liverpool's power and connection to the wider world. The docks stretched for miles along the River Mersey, filled with crates, containers, and the constant hum of workers loading and unloading ships. It was a place where fortunes were made, and the city's economy depended heavily on the flow of goods through this gateway. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Liverpool became one of the busiest ports in the world. Its docks handled everything from cotton and coal to tea and spices. The docks also played a major role in the global shipping industry, connecting Britain to South America, Africa, and beyond. This international reach made Liverpool a hub for trade and commerce, attracting people from all walks of life: sailors, merchants, dock workers, and entrepreneurs. The city's identity was closely tied to the port, and the docks were a source of pride for its residents. But beneath the surface of this busy trade network, a darker world was quietly taking shape. The same skills that made Liverpool's dockworkers experts at moving goods efficiently also made them invaluable to criminals. Smuggling had long been part of the port's history, with small contraband hidden in shipments. Over time, as the city's economy changed and the docks became less busy, criminal activity began to grow in the shadows. The port's international connections meant that it was perfectly positioned to become more than just a place for legal trade. It was becoming a gateway for illegal goods, including drugs. The infrastructure was already in place: warehouses, transport networks, and a workforce familiar with the intricacies of the docks. What had once been a symbol of Liverpool's prosperity was slowly turning into a route for a dangerous global trade. This transformation marked the beginning of a new chapter in the city's story, one that would bring wealth, violence, and challenges unlike anything it had seen before. As Liverpool's docks began to decline in the late 20th century, the city faced tough economic times. Shipbuilding and traditional cargo handling were shrinking industries, and many dockworkers found themselves out of work. But the skills these workers had developed over decades, knowing how to move goods quickly, how to hide things in plain sight, and how to navigate the complex maze of containers, did not disappear. Instead, they became tools for a different kind of business: organized crime. Small smuggling operations started to grow in scale and sophistication. What once might have been hidden cigarettes or small amounts of stolen goods soon turned into larger shipments of illegal items. The docks, which had been the backbone of Liverpool's economy, now became a hidden playground for gangs looking to make money through illegal trade. These groups were often made up of former dockworkers and locals who understood the city's layout better than anyone else. As these gangs expanded, they began to form structured networks. They moved beyond petty crimes and theft to trafficking drugs, particularly cocaine. This shift was not random. The growing demand for cocaine in the UK and Europe made it a highly profitable product. The gangs capitalized on their access to shipping routes and the ability to smuggle large quantities undetected. Their operations became more organized, with clear roles for different members, from those who arranged shipments to those who handled distribution on the streets. These early criminal networks were still somewhat local, but their ambitions soon grew. They realized that to truly succeed, they needed to connect with suppliers abroad, especially in South America, where cocaine was produced. This was the beginning of a dangerous evolution, from street-level crime to an international criminal enterprise. What started as small smuggling rings now aimed to become part of a global cocaine pipeline. At the same time, the authorities were slow to respond. The scale and sophistication of these emerging networks caught many by surprise. For years, the gangs operated under the radar, quietly building their empires. The skills learned in the docks, discretion, planning, and logistics, helped them stay one step ahead of the law. This chapter of Liverpool's underworld set the stage for a new era, where the city's historic port became a vital link in a deadly global drug trade. Liverpool's deep-rooted history as a global port made it a natural bridge between continents, and this connection soon extended into the criminal underworld. As the cocaine trade grew, Liverpool's gangs began to forge direct ties with powerful cartels in South America, especially in countries like Colombia and Peru, where cocaine production was booming. These connections were no accident. They were carefully cultivated relationships that turned Liverpool into a crucial hub in the international drug trade. The journey of cocaine from remote South American jungles to Liverpool's docks was complex and dangerous. Cartels controlled the source, producing vast quantities of the drug, but they needed reliable partners overseas to move the product into lucrative markets in Europe and beyond. Liverpool's Mafia, with its deep knowledge of shipping and port logistics, fit perfectly into this role. The city's old trade routes became new arteries for a deadly business, carrying cocaine hidden in shipments alongside legitimate goods like fruit, machinery, or electronics. These criminal partnerships were built on trust, but also fear. The cartels were ruthless, and any mistake could lead to brutal consequences. Liverpool's gangs had to prove they could handle the shipments, keep the police away, and distribute the drugs efficiently. The stakes were high, but the rewards were enormous. The cocaine pipeline quickly grew in volume, making Liverpool one of the main entry points for the drug in Europe. What made these connections so dangerous was how deeply integrated they became. The pipeline wasn't just about moving drugs. It was about controlling an entire network that spanned continents. Money flowed back to South America, funding further production and violence. Meanwhile, the drugs flooded European streets, fueling addiction and crime. Liverpool's Mafia became more than local criminals. They were now players on an international stage. At the same time, the city remained unaware of the true scale of this operation. The cocaine shipments were hidden with incredible precision, often inside containers that appeared ordinary. This invisible pipeline operated quietly, its impact hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. The historic port city, that once symbolized global trade, was now a key link in a dangerous chain connecting distant continents through cocaine and crime. Liverpool's cocaine pipeline operated with a level of precision and secrecy that was almost invisible to the outside world. Unlike the violent drug wars seen in other cities, the Liverpool Mafia used subtlety and careful planning to keep their operation running smoothly. The dock's complex system of containers and cargo provided the perfect cover for hiding massive shipments of cocaine, often concealed within legitimate goods. This allowed the drugs to move through customs and inspections undetected, making the pipeline remarkably efficient. The logistics behind the operation were a marvel of criminal engineering. Containers packed with everyday items like bananas, machinery, or textiles would have secret compartments built inside. Sometimes, the cocaine was hidden under layers of legitimate products, making detection nearly impossible without specialized knowledge. The dock workers involved knew exactly which containers to handle, when to do it, and how to avoid raising suspicion. Their experience was crucial in ensuring the cocaine shipments slipped through without alerting authorities. This invisible pipeline extended far beyond Liverpool's docks. Once the drugs arrived, they were quickly moved to safe houses and warehouses across the city. From there they were distributed through an extensive network that reached towns and cities throughout the UK and into Europe. The Mafia's control over the entire supply chain from import to street-level dealers meant they could maximize profits and minimize risks. They were constantly adapting, changing routes and methods whenever they sensed increased police attention. One surprising aspect was how the operation involved a range of people, from low-level workers to high-ranking criminals. Each person played a specific role, and communication was carefully managed to avoid leaks. Even within law enforcement, many were unaware of just how deeply the Mafia's reach extended. The cocaine pipeline operated like a shadow economy, invisible but powerful. This secretive approach allowed Liverpool's Mafia to dominate the cocaine trade for years. While other cities faced open violence and chaos, Liverpool's criminal networks maintained a low profile, but beneath the calm surface, the scale of the pipeline was staggering. Hundreds of kilograms of cocaine moving through the city each week. This chapter in Liverpool's story revealed how a historic port city had become the center of a global drug trafficking empire, hidden in plain sight. As Liverpool's cocaine pipeline grew stronger, the mafia's influence began to spread across Europe. The city's criminal networks didn't work in isolation. They formed complex relationships with other groups in countries like Spain, the Netherlands, and Italy. These connections were not always peaceful. Some were built on cooperation, while others erupted into brutal rivalries. The battle for control over drug routes and markets across the continent made Europe a key battleground in the cocaine trade. Spain quickly became a vital partner for Liverpool's mafia. Its ports, especially in cities like Valencia and Algeciras, were major entry points for cocaine from South America. Liverpool's groups forged alliances with Spanish gangs who helped move shipments further inland. In return, Liverpool offered expertise in logistics and distribution, creating a mutually beneficial relationship. But beneath the surface, competition simmered. Different factions vied for dominance, sometimes clashing violently over territory and control of shipments. The Netherlands, with its major port of Rotterdam, was another important hub. Criminal networks there shared similar smuggling tactics, using Rotterdam as a gateway for drugs into Europe. The Liverpool Mafia found both allies and rivals in the Dutch underworld. While collaboration helped expand the pipeline's reach, tensions between groups often led to violent confrontations, including shootings and bombings that shocked local communities. Italy's organized crime groups, like the Mafia and 'Ndrangheta, were also deeply involved in Europe's cocaine trade. These powerful organizations controlled much of the drug market in southern Europe and often worked with Liverpool's gangs to move cocaine northwards. However, alliances were fragile and based on convenience rather than trust. Betrayals and power struggles were common, creating a constant undercurrent of danger. Despite the violence and competition, Liverpool's mafia managed to maintain a strong position in Europe's cocaine trade. Their ability to navigate these dangerous relationships showed a level of cunning and strategy beyond street-level crime. By controlling key parts of the supply chain and forging strategic alliances, Liverpool's underworld became a critical link connecting South American cartels to European markets. This chapter reveals how the cocaine pipeline was not just a local problem. It was a sprawling international network shaped by shifting alliances and ruthless battles for power. The influx of cocaine into Liverpool brought more than just wealth to the city's underworld. It brought widespread violence and addiction that tore communities apart. As the drug flooded the streets, neighborhoods once known for their close-knit families and strong communities began to change. The easy availability of cocaine led to rising addiction rates, fueling a public health crisis that affected people from all walks of life. The cocaine trade also brought with it a wave of violence rarely seen before in Liverpool. Rival gangs fought fiercely to control territories and protect their shipments. Shootings, beatings, and intimidation became everyday realities in certain areas, instilling fear in residents who found themselves caught in the middle. Innocent bystanders were often victims of this violence, and the city's reputation began to suffer. What was once a proud port city became known in some circles as a dangerous place ruled by crime. This chapter uncovers how the cocaine epidemic extended beyond the streets and directly impacted families. Addiction tore apart relationships, with parents struggling to protect their children from the lure of drugs. Many young people were drawn into the criminal lifestyle, seeing it as one of the few options available in economically depressed neighborhoods. The cycle of poverty, addiction and violence became deeply entrenched, making it difficult for the city to break free. Despite these challenges, some communities refused to give up. Local activists, charities, and community leaders began working to combat the crisis, offering support and rehabilitation to those affected by addiction. Law enforcement increased efforts to target violent gangs, though progress was slow and often met with resistance. At the same time, the city's authorities faced criticism for their handling of the crisis. Some argued that law enforcement focused too much on arrests, and not enough on prevention or rehabilitation. Others suspected that corruption and fear within the system allowed the cocaine pipeline to continue operating largely unchecked. This chapter reveals the human cost of Liverpool's cocaine trade, the devastating effects on everyday people and the city as a whole. It's a story of struggle, resilience, and the ongoing fight to reclaim neighborhoods from the grip of drugs and violence. The cocaine epidemic wasn't just a crime problem. It was a deep social wound that Liverpool continues to heal. After years of operating largely in the shadows, the criminal empire controlling Liverpool's cocaine pipeline was suddenly shaken by the fall of a key figure. Known only through whispers in the underworld, this kingpin had become one of the most powerful men behind the city's drug trade. His capture marked a turning point, promising to disrupt the flow of cocaine and deal a serious blow to the mafia's influence. Yet, what unfolded was far more complicated and unexpected. The arrest came after a long and painstaking investigation by law enforcement agencies, involving surveillance, informants, and international collaboration. Authorities believed that taking down this one man would unravel the entire operation. The kingpin had been linked to multiple shipments and was thought to be the mastermind coordinating the pipeline from Liverpool to South America and Europe. His trial became a high-profile case, drawing intense media attention and public hope for justice. However, as details emerged, cracks appeared in the prosecution's case. Witnesses retracted statements, evidence was challenged, and questions arose about the integrity of those involved in the investigation. Behind closed doors, rumors circulated about pressure being applied to key players, and some feared that corruption might have tainted the case. The trial revealed not only the kingpin's criminal activities, but also the fragile and compromised system trying to bring him to justice. Even with his conviction, the cocaine pipeline did not collapse, as expected. Instead, rival factions within the mafia quickly moved to fill the power vacuum. The arrests seemed to trigger a new wave of violence, as these groups fought to control the lucrative trade. The city's streets became even more dangerous for a time, as alliances shifted and old scores were settled. The kingpin's downfall exposed how deeply embedded the criminal networks were and how difficult it was to dismantle them. This chapter reveals the complex reality behind law enforcement victories. Capturing a single figure, no matter how powerful, not enough to stop the pipeline or end Liverpool's cocaine epidemic. It showed that the battle against the mafia was far from over, entangled with corruption, internal struggles, and an ongoing fight for control that would continue to shape the city's future. As investigations into Liverpool's cocaine pipeline deepened, shocking evidence emerged revealing that the criminal network's reach extended far beyond the docks and city streets. It became clear that some officials, including those within law enforcement and local government, were involved in maintaining the flow of cocaine. This corruption helped protect the pipeline, allowing shipments to move through with little interference and enabling the mafia to operate with near impunity. The discovery of collusion came as a surprise to many. Those expected to uphold the law were instead bending or breaking it for personal gain. Some officers were bribed to turn a blind eye during inspections, while others provided vital information about ongoing investigations, helping traffickers stay one step ahead. Corrupt officials also facilitated the laundering of drug money, making the illegal profits appear legitimate and fueling the cycle of crime. This web of corruption created a dangerous environment where trust broke down not only between the public and authorities, but also within the law enforcement community itself. Honest officers found themselves working against colleagues who were secretly aiding criminals, complicating efforts to tackle the cocaine trade. Whistleblowers faced intimidation or worse, making it difficult to expose these hidden alliances. The impact of this corruption was profound. It allowed the cocaine pipeline to grow stronger, operating under a protective shield that few could penetrate. Communities suffered as drug shipments continued to pour in, while those meant to protect citizens were sometimes complicit in the damage. This betrayal deepened the city's wounds, making the fight against the mafia not just a battle of criminals versus police, but a struggle to reclaim integrity and justice. Efforts to root out corruption became a critical focus, with special investigations and independent watchdogs brought in to restore faith in the system. However, the process was slow and fraught with challenges. The Mafia's influence in both the underworld and official circles showed how deeply the cocaine trade had embedded itself in Liverpool's institutions. This chapter exposes the hidden hands that kept the cocaine pipeline alive and highlights the daunting obstacles faced by those determined to bring the city's criminal empire to justice. It is a story of betrayal and resilience, where the line between right and wrong was blurred, and the true battle was as much within the system as it was on the streets. Even as law enforcement made high-profile arrests and cracked down on known traffickers, Liverpool's cocaine pipeline proved remarkably resilient. The Mafia quickly adapted, evolving into a more sophisticated and elusive operation. This new era of trafficking relied heavily on advanced technology, changing global politics and shifting market demands to stay ahead of the authorities. One of the biggest changes came with communication. Traffickers began using encrypted messaging apps and coded language to coordinate shipments and avoid surveillance. These digital tools made it far harder for police to intercept conversations or track movements, allowing the Mafia to operate with increased secrecy. The use of technology extended beyond communication. Drones, GPS trackers and other innovations were employed to monitor shipments and spot law enforcement activity in real time. Global political changes also affected the pipeline's routes. As some countries tightened border security, traffickers shifted their focus to less obvious, emerging pathways. New smuggling corridors appeared through smaller ports and inland transport hubs, often crossing multiple borders to confuse authorities. This constant adaptation made it nearly impossible for any single country to fully control or disrupt the network. At the same time, changing consumer habits influenced how the Mafia operated. Demand for cocaine increased across Europe, but preferences shifted toward purer, higher-quality drugs. The Liverpool Mafia responded by working more closely with South American cartels to control production standards and ensure their product remained competitive on the market. This cooperation deepened the global connections that had been built over decades. The Mafia also diversified, investing drug profits into legitimate businesses such as real estate, nightclubs and shipping companies. These legal fronts helped launder money and provided additional layers of protection from law enforcement scrutiny. It became harder to separate the criminal world from the legitimate economy, blurring lines and complicating investigations. This chapter shows how Liverpool's cocaine pipeline transformed into a modern, technology-driven empire. The battle against trafficking became a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, where innovation and adaptability were as crucial as brute force. Despite decades of police efforts, the Mafia's ability to evolve ensured that the cocaine trade remained a powerful and persistent force. Liverpool today is a city marked by contrasts, a place proud of its history, but still grappling with the legacy of the cocaine trade that once gripped its streets and docks. The battle against the Mafia's pipeline has left deep scars. It has also sparked a powerful movement toward healing and reclaiming the city's identity. Communities, law enforcement, and activists have come together to face the challenges head-on, determined to build a future free from the shadow of drugs and crime. Efforts to tackle the cocaine trade have become more focused on prevention and rehabilitation. Community programs aim to support those affected by addiction, offering treatment and opportunities for recovery. Schools and local groups work to educate young people about the dangers of drugs, hoping to break the cycle that trapped so many before them. At the same time, police continue to target the criminal networks, using new technologies and international cooperation to dismantle trafficking routes. Yet, the struggle is far from over. The Mafia's influence still lingers in parts of the city, and the cocaine pipeline remains a complex, global problem that cannot be solved overnight. Economic challenges and social inequalities provide fertile ground for crime to resurface, but there is a growing sense of resilience and determination among Liverpool's residents, who refuse to let their city be defined by its darkest chapters. Liverpool's story is also one of transformation. Once known solely for its docks and shipping, the city has reinvented itself as a cultural and creative hub. New